Okay, we are in the eighth year of Purim. We are now moving on to siman Kuf Mem Beis. We finished with all the ideas of Tainus Esther, of Purim itself, of the Megillah, and now we're moving on to the other three mitzvahs of Mishleach Manes, Matanas Levyenim, and the Seudah. So let us begin. Sif Aleph. Chayev kol adam l'shleich l'chol hapachis l'odam echad shtei matanos. Every person has a chiyuv to send at least to one person two gifts, meaning two gifts of food. Why? Because it says in the pasuk umishloyach manos ish l'reyehu. You should send plural manos, but it should be l'reyehu to one person, which is singular. Mashba shtei matanos echad, which implies two gifts of food to at least one person. No, hold on. Whoever does this more, in other words, they're spreading more kindness, that's a good thing. However, says the Kitzur, nevertheless, it's also a better thing to do to give more gifts to the poor people, which was the other mitzvah. That's more important than having a bigger seudah and giving more gifts to people that don't need it. They're not in financial stress. Better give more tzedakah. Why? Hashem is not happier than when someone goes and they bring joy to poor people and to people that are lacking resources and Yisayimim Amanis and all that type of thing. Hashem appreciates that a lot more. And someone who goes and he brings joy to these types of people. So Deima L'Shchina, they are compared, they're doing an action that's similar to what Hashem does. Which word? Omlalim? Unfortunate ones. Deima means similar. Yeah, similar, whatever, same thing. Dimyon is an example. Deima would mean similar to. Shenemar Lahachiyos Ruach Shvalim, like it says in the Pasuk, that this is from the Navi, where it says that Hashem gives chayas to the people who are shvalim. Shafal means like lowly people. Well, hachiyas leiv nitkoyim, and to give chayas to those that have a crushed heart. So first of all, let's get into this a little bit like this. Some people have a common misconception where they say that you need to be giving two brachis. That's not what it says here. It doesn't say two brachis. It says two foods. So in that case, if let's say, for example, you have two types of meat. Let's say you have chicken and meat, or you have burgers and a steak, or something like that, that could count as two manos. But if you have, let's just say, chicken that's in barbecue sauce and chicken that's grilled or something like that, so that probably would not be considered two. That would be considered one, because it's the same food, it's just prepared in a different way. So that's something to keep in mind. Now, when it comes to, let's say, powdered stuff, like, for example, coffee, people give instant coffee, or let's say, potato, what do you call it, mashed potatoes, where you just have to add, things that you just add water to, that's what I mean. So in that case, you do have a little machlekes. Some would say, no, soups is an actual substance, but we'll get to that in a second. So some would say that that if you just have to add water to the mashed potatoes and it becomes the whole thing, that's fine. Some would differentiate. I don't know why, but they would say coffee is not like that, and it's not. It wouldn't count as one of them. But I've seen that most people would probably say that it's not really true. If all you need to do is add water, and then it's done, then that would be fine. One second. Let me just go through a few things here. Now, we said in the beginning, the first expression we said is that every person has a chiyuv lishloyach, to send. So based on that, there is a meaning that you've probably seen where people use a shliach, a middle person. Now, it doesn't have to be a kosher shliach. It could be a child, could be anyone. But parents will send someone to do it for them, or if you're going on the streets of Crown Heights, or anywhere, Crown Heights could be over here also, Phoenix is Crown Heights, I guess, right? So you ask someone, can you bring this to this house or something like that? That's a common thing. You don't have to, but there is a nice thing. I've also seen the opposite, because in Phoenix there's a neighborhood called Crown Heights, where people live, the Lubavitchers live, most of them. I've seen people say actually the opposite, because there's idea of mitzvah ba yoser mi b'shlucha. There's a bigger mitzvah if you do something yourself. There's a bigger mitzvah if you do something yourself than to hand it over to a shliach. So I've seen both sides, but it's definitely common that people go and they send it away to someone else. One second. Now, so one of the reasons that I've seen, or two of the reasons that I've seen for why the Chachamim instituted, or Esther promoted, this idea of Mishleach Manes. So one of them is, I saw, because what was Haman's taina? Haman's taina was that there's a nation that's mefuzar u'mefured bein ha'amim. What does that mean? That they're splintered among themselves. not only are they not part of the local community that they're in, but even among themselves, they're splintered. So here we promote the opposite. We show unity. We show achdus. We show that we're having peace and friendship and all that stuff. So that's one reason. And another more practical reason is because one of the mitzvahs is the seudah, and you have a lot of people that, for sure in those days, that didn't have funds or resources to have a proper seudah. So give them mishleach manis, and in this way, everyone will have an opportunity to have a seudah as well. So those are the two types of things that I've seen. One second. Okay, that's something else. Now, let's say you're in yeshiva and you don't actually have things to go and buy mishleach manos. You're sitting, either you can't afford it or you're just there's no thing around or whatever. So technically, you could exchange with friends, and shluchim do this also. They'll put on a table a whole bag of a bunch of shalach manos, and they'll tell everyone, "Hey, can you take and give to someone else, and someone else will take and give to you?" You can't make a condition. You can't give it to someone and say, "I'm giving this to you on condition you give it back." But this happens all the time. Bachrim go on the merker shluchas, the far places. They go to prisons. They go to communities that don't have anyone, and it comes, and the whole day they're busy with all the mivtzayim, and it comes right before Nacht, and they realize, okay, Megillah they heard by default because they lane. The Seudah they probably ate throughout the day, and we'll see later, Lav Dafka, you have to have meat and wine, but you have to have wine for another reason, but not for the Seudah part. But the other, but Matanas Avyenim they could do anytime, you give tzedakah, but they realized Mishleach Manas they didn't have time to do. They were so busy making sure everyone else did. So in that case, you could exchange. You could take two things and give it to someone else, even though it's the same pile, and he could take and give to you also. But you can't make that condition that this is what you're going to do. The Rebbe had a minute that he would give three, Kohen Levi Yisrael, even though you don't have to. But that was the Rebbe's minute, and people try to do that as well. Okay, that's it for this part. Yes, what would you say? Yeah, question? Did you have a question?
Yes, I have a question.
Yes.
Okay, it seems from the process is Shlach plural, you have to give two to each person. Can you fulfill that by giving a Mishleach that's like many different types of stuff inside that? Is that Matanis means like monos, I guess, what does it mean like different types of foods? Or does it mean like an actual like step?
So let's get to the next, we'll do the next sif and then I'll answer your question a little bit, okay? Yeah. Yeah, so it's brought down on the place scheme that you should. Same thing with Matanos Levyanim, but it's not necessarily going to fulfill the mitzvah, but it is something about spreading simcha of the Yom Tif. The mitzvah would only be fulfilled by giving it to Yid. Yeah, it says Matanos. What does it say? It says Mashleich Manas Ish Re'eu. Usually Re'eu means someone that's also mechuyev in mitzvahs. So you should, and you could. I should say you could. And it's a positive thing. The place can brings like added simcha, and it shows that we're celebrating, so it's a good thing for Sumei Nisa. But it wouldn't fulfill the obligation. You'd still have to make sure another Yid gets. Yeah.
You know what to do in yeshiva?
Here,
Yeah.
I don't know. So I said either you'll be able to get your own, buy something somewhere, or you could exchange with each other. If you go to shluchim, a lot of shluchim will have stuff around, so you could take. They'll be yours to take and give. Let's do the next sif. Let's do the next sif first. What does it mean when you say manos, gifts of food? It needs to be something that's edible as it is without tikkun, without needing much. So I mentioned, like, let's say adding water to coffee, which is where you have machlekes, but most people will say adding water to something still counts because it's very minimal. You're not really doing much. But let's say you have kagoin basar v'dagim mevushalim. Let's say you want to give cooked or baked meat or fish. Perfect. That's the way to do it. But not to give raw. I mean, or let's say sweet things like candies, those are things that you could do. I think he's saying mesika possibly not to do. I'm not sure. I think he's saying you could do that. He's saying you should give cooked meat, not raw, and you can give sweet things or peiros or wine or honey or things like that you could eat right away as it is. Now the Rebbe says on this, if you look in the bottom, he says. You should try to see, because a mana, what's a manos? Manos is a value, like a gift of substance. It's not just like you throw someone a penny. It used to be you gave someone a quarter when they were collecting tzedakah, they were excited. But that's when I was a kid, because a quarter was a lot of money. You can, you can get a airline ticket for a quarter. But nowadays, no, I'm joking. But nowadays, you give them a quarter, they throw it back in your face, basically. So times change, the value of money changed. So, but you have to give something of value that they can actually go and have and eat something with it. It shouldn't be something that's valueless. So therefore, the Rebbe says in the bottom, they quote that it should be at least the kazayas, v'im efsher kazayas the kol mana. In other words, together it should be a kazayas. So if you're giving a candy together with a Coke, if Coke works, we'll see in a second. So let's say with something else. So it could work. It is a kazayas. It's more than an aviz. But best is if each one could be a kazayis. So some people try that depending on what your situation is. And then he says also v'shiyu shavin b'shas adchat biyachad al kol panim shav a pruta. So also be worth at least a pruta. And if you don't have an option of both of them being each worth a pruta, at least together it should be worth a pruta. So the point is it has to have a minimal value so that it should be a substantial gift, and it shouldn't just be something that's valueless. Now, drinks, as we mentioned, because he says, wine could work. So drinks also could work. Some people say sodas don't, but if you look around, I think most people are giving some form of soda. I think last year there was a sale. Some guy Lubavitcher had a big discount on some sort of wine, so everyone gave wine. But other years, lav dafka is everyone giving wine. They're usually giving sodas, and once in a while, someone will give something different. So, but it looks like b'pashtus that could count according to most people. As we'll see later, men should give to men, women should give to women. That's generally the rule. But you could broaden that. We'll come again to that soon. Now, another thing also is that let's say this is supposed to be on Purim. So what happens if you tell someone before Purim that they should deliver it on Purim? So that can work as long as it gets to them on Purim. But the other way around, to give it to someone on Purim that they should be delivering it for after Purim, that would not work. So if let's say today you go online and you order or whatever, and it should be delivered on Purim, that can work. But if you're going to go on Purim and say, oh, I forgot to give Shabbat Mishlech Manas, let me go online and quickly do something, then it won't work. It has to get to them on Purim itself. Yeah.
So you have to do, does it have to be both food and drink or just one of the?
No, so I said there's a common misconception when people say two brachas. It doesn't say two brachas. It says two types of food. So two types of food they could both be bracha shahakal. They could even be two types of meat, but it has to be two different things. So let's say you have a piece of steak and a burger, that could count, or chicken and this, or whatever, that can count. But if you have two pieces of chicken and one is, no, grilled actually might be different. So let's say one has barbecue sauce and one has shawarma sauce, whatever. I don't know. It's just a spice. Okay, whatever. The point is that if it's the same thing with a slight difference, it wouldn't count. Yeah.
Of the same fruit, but it's two different kinds.
The same fruit or different fruits?
So same fruit, two different species.
How is it two different species of the same fruit?
Man, you have one like a red apple, and you have like a green.
That's a good question. I think it does not count. If I don't remember offhand, I remember seeing that, but I don't remember what the halacha was. I think it's the same. It's considered one. I think it's considered the same. So yeah, I said there are opinions that would say it doesn't, but Pashtus it seems like it would. Meaning, even though there it's not edible, but all you have to do is add water, instant coffee. Now, if it's not instant, it might be a different story. Instant coffee in itself turns into, I think that most people would say it's fine. It says a kazayas and worth a pruta. So I assume for drinks it will probably be a revius, so it will make sense. Some people say drinks are b'chlal not ideal, but for those that say that you could do drinks, yeah, I think it's a 5-6 cents or 4 point something, or it's not a lot.
That's 5-6.
Yes. What's your question? You had a question also?
Bro, they don't make pennies anymore, so.
You had a question?
Are they like two different flavors of the same candy? Like that?
I don't think so. I think that would be considered one. If it's two different types, let's say one is chocolate and one is or a different type, that could count. But if it's two different zazas and one is strawberry, one is raspberry, that counts as the same.
Yes.
What?
Okay, let's say someone marries a claim.
Okay. No. Siv Gimel, you ask me later or tomorrow? No. Siv Gimel. Call Adam, any person, afilu call Adam, every person, afilu anisha b'Yisrael, hamekabel tzedakah, they themselves receive tzedakah. Nevertheless, chayiv litin l'kol ha'pacha shtei matanes, they have to give two gifts, l'shnei aniyim, to two separate poor people. Okay, so here is a different thing. Here you have to give two gifts, and it needs to be distributed to two. In other words, one gift to each poor person. Dahainu matana achas l'kol echad. This means one gift to two people. So one to person Aleph and one to person Bey. So you end up giving two gifts of tzedakah to two separate people. Tiksiv, because it says in the pasuk, umatanais le'evyeinu. Matanis is plural, and that should be given to two people. So two to two, which means one to each. Mashmash te matanais l'shnei evyeinu. Now, the aim medaktikim b'mois, Purim in general, we're not medaktik, means we're not specific, we're not precise when it comes to tzedakah on Purim. And this is the famous expression, yad dito. Whoever puts out their hand to take, nice and light, you give them. If there's no poor people where you live, you should set aside the money until you'll eventually meet poor people, or you'll end up sending it to them. So that's an option where people will go online and they'll do it, but it doesn't clear your credit card or whatever till after, but that would be okay. Now, again, in this case where you're giving matanis levyenim, the minimal would be an amount that can be usable by the poor person. So some people will say a pruta, but a pruta nowadays is not very usable. So some people will say the value of a meal, which is usually $18 or maybe a little bit less. Maybe a little bit less. You could probably do less. No, if you go to a store and you buy a sandwich, so yeah, maybe now it's $12 these days. So whatever the price of a small meal would be, that would be something like that. Now, it is better to give, it seems like it's better to give money, even though food is what the objective is, that they should have food. But nevertheless, it seems like money is the better way of doing the tzedakah for whatever reason. And you're not allowed to give this from meiser. So people often ask, can I do certain mitzvahs with meiser? So in this case, because you have a chiyuv and a mitzvah to give this thing, you're not allowed to use meiser money. You have to use your own money. Meiser money could be if you want to give more, if you want to give a third poor person, or if you want to give more than the minimum, then you could use meiser. But for your base requirement, you're not allowed to use meiser to pay for your responsibility. So that you're not allowed to do. Okay, we will stop for today.